Hello, hello, hello. How are you guys doing? Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you may be. Please let me know in the comments where you guys are tuning in from, what state, what town, what city, what country you're watching from. I see there are already a couple of hundred of you slowly milling into the live chat, so Thank you for the super chat, Hussein. Hussein says Lula is in China and Iran with a new sea route to Brazil. Everything is coming together. Everything is coming together, right? Which we'll get to in just a second. Look, we've got people joining from Manchester, from Tucson, or am I saying it correctly? Within Arizona, in any case, and Montana, Manchester, Kenya, Michigan, Slovenia, Manchester, London, Jamaica, from Oregon, from Finland, from Germany, from the Netherlands, British Columbia, Seattle, beautiful, beautiful, Mexico City, Quebec, and it goes on and on and on. No, it's great to see you guys. So let's slowly dive into this. But I thought one thing that I wanted to talk about just before I got to the more current themes is this. Just give me a moment, and there we go. I suspect you'll be able to hear and see in just a second. One moment. Right. So, we're going off of now 4 years since they arrested Julian Assange. I thought I'd play that video for you again here, where he's being, essentially, he's being dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy. This is right next to Harrods. Yeah. Basically, he was sold off, you could say, by Ecuador at this point, right? For an IMF loan, and they ended up making up a bunch of nasty things about him, like, oh, he was, he wasn't a tidy guest, some nonsense like that. It's all political, right? It's all political. So, why do I bring this up? Because April 10th, 2019, I mean, the Metropolitan Police even posted about it on Twitter, right? That they had arrested him. This is the anniversary, 4-year anniversary of his arrest. And I mention this because I've covered his case in court, and as I say, it's a very intricate case and deep case. It's also not that complex, right? I mean, there are many intricacies, and it is quite a rabbit hole once you start understanding it. But really, on the surface, it's not that difficult to understand. I know that there's like all sorts of terms they have, like, oh well, he's a whistleblower, he's an activist. No, man. When you're releasing these documents, and you've got like 20 different outlets and journalists saying that we worked with this guy meticulously to protect people, not just the sources, but also the ones mentioned in the documents, and we had to go through this goddamn painstaking effort of combing through every single one, and we were very diligent and very, very careful about it. And then the mainstream media just ignore all of this and start saying, well, he's endangering lives. There's a narrative going on here, right? And that's to kind of make him look like he's reckless or something. No, man, the state is being reckless. The state is being reckless. So don't forget, because the case has kind of gone dormant for now, you could say, right? There's the appeals process, which is coming up, and then I will, of course, be there in court as usual to cover it for you, but don't forget about him. And there are many ways you can support, and that's to not let them get away with this strategy, which is kind of like, let's throw people and we'll lock them in their cell and then throw away the key as well. Don't let them get away with that, because that's what they want. They want you to forget and to be quiet and to be complacent. don't acquiesce to this rubbish, because it's intolerable. Okay. Let me go to the Middle East, because I feel like everything that's happening right now is let's start with this. I thought I'd start with okay. So let's go through everything that's happened this last week in the Middle East, and particularly in Palestine, because I think it warrants special attention, right? So the Israelis, they come into Al-Aqsa Mosque, and keep in mind this is Ramadan, so people are going there for their prayers to break fast and everything. There's lots of people. The place is buzzing, and what are the Israelis doing? They're going in and just beating up worshippers. I mean, just look here, just a few videos, right? These just people standing around praying, and no, we got to come in and shove them, and just treat them like cattle or something. I mean. And this is kind of an annual thing. I don't mean Ramadan. I mean the Israelis going in and just destroying the place, right? So this is the courtyard outside, and they're using stun grenades, and they're using gas and everything, the usual, yeah. And this is inside the mosque now. I mean, they're going wild. You can see them just beating on people like there's no tomorrow. It's insane. It's really insane. And so everyone is angry. Everyone is very angry at these images, seeing worshippers being beaten up like that. This is a very, very
the violence.
For Arab countries, the surrounding countries, this is very, very, very upsetting. And I don't just mean on an emotional level. It's a very sensitive issue politically. And so you had a response, right? You guys remember not too long ago, Hamas fired rockets into occupied Palestine, into Israel, because of this, and they got all of Palestine together as one, and that was its own its own story, and it was quite it was quite considerable, because I don't think they'd ever succeeded in doing it in that fashion before, right? To kind of unite everyone and get their support that way, just for standing up. Because remember, we're talking about a different area of Palestine here, so it's not in Jerusalem or near Jerusalem, right? So Gaza defending Jerusalem because of this brutality, they got everyone's respect. They meaning Hamas. What happened the last week, though, is even more crazy, because you had a response not just from Gaza, and here you can see, of course, the Israelis trying to extinguish Gaza's response with huge craters and bombing raids. Right, so they were like, okay, you want to fire rockets at us? We're going to come and bomb you. It's the usual treatment. What happened after this is that you had rocket fire coming towards Israel, not just from Gaza, but from South Lebanon and from Syria. I mean, tell me the last time you saw something like this. It's very obviously it's coordinated, right? That's not to say that there's some because they want to paint it as the Iranian puppet masters, like hiding behind the scenes and pulling the strings and telling everyone what to do. No. It's not that. It's everybody, kind of saying, okay, this is it. This is enough is enough. That is what's special about it. And the Israelis, because they were too afraid to start, a confrontation with Hezbollah, because since 2006, there's been an understanding that if you screw with South Lebanon, then Hezbollah will teach you a lesson. That's it's the status quo, and the Israelis have maintained that, and they have I don't think they've ever bombed South Lebanon, at least not like there's been no campaign since 2006, because that was very humiliating for them. So there was, as I told you, rocket fire from South Lebanon. So the Israelis are not quite sure what to do, because is this Hezbollah or is it Hamas? Who's doing the shooting? And to this day, as I'm speaking to you now, no, you're not going to see Hezbollah or Hamas confirm who sent the rockets. And it doesn't matter, really. This is what I'm trying to tell you. It doesn't actually matter, because this is a unified front. And when I say unified front, I mean all of these players, whether it's Hezbollah or it's Hamas or it's Syria or it's Iran or it's Yemen, they're in one unified front. And you'll hear, of course, the United States calls it the axis of evil, but on the ground, it's more commonly known as the axis of resistance. Do you understand? So the fact that you're seeing a response to this brutality in the mosque from Israel, at the same time from Syria, from South Lebanon, so from Hezbollah, South Lebanon is their turf. You need to understand that. When we say South Lebanon, it's synonymous with Hezbollah. And as I said, Gaza, you've never seen that before, right? You've never seen that before. And then the Israelis did bomb South Lebanon just a few days ago in response, but it was kind of like in and out, like a cat, like for 1 second. It was nothing serious, because as I said, if they'd started some serious campaign, I mean, they would have been drawn into a proper war with Hezbollah, and they're not equipped to deal with that in 2006, and they're not equipped to deal with it now. Now you had the Israelis, of course, doing their PR on Twitter, saying, look, we found the site and the source of the rocket attack inside of Syria, and we went and bombed them and taught them a lesson. Yeah, but they taught you a lesson, because you don't usually see this, do you? The Arab League also, they called an emergency meeting, which you never see that. When's the last time? Man, the Israelis are beating on the Palestinians every day. When's the last time that the Arab League actually, stood up and said, hey, we should call a meeting about this at least and just parlay? Never. Okay, so this is the region is changing. The region is changing, and the Israelis are basically experiencing backlash, from multiple fronts. And if you know anything, even just a little bit about warfare and strategy, that is your worst nightmare, is to have a war on multiple fronts. So you may think of this in similar terms. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but just as an analogy, the 1967 war, we had Syria and Egypt coming at the Israelis from multiple fronts. Obviously, not the best outcome for them in the end, but the premise is the same. You have opponents attacking you from different sides. Where do you split your resources? Where do you send your troops? It's very difficult situation to be in. Now, what I just told you is funny, because I found it laid out basically in the Jerusalem Post, which is an Israeli paper, and the way that they framed it is that Iran kickstarts multi-front Middle East war against Israel. Okay, that sounds ridiculous. First of all, it's not Iran doing anything, really. It's just people standing up for themselves. But okay. And then they say it's a war against Israel. Again, no one is picking a fight with you. I mean, this is really simple. Like I showed this in the beginning. Israel is asking people to just tolerate this. I mean, come on, man. Again, what this video here with just pushing worshippers aside, it's like the mildest of the crimes that have taken place in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. But just going back to this piece in the Jerusalem Post, they get it, right? They're telling it to you the same way that I just said it, that you've had rocket fire coming from Lebanon, from Gaza, from Syria. But the way that they say it, and the Israelis look at it, is they say it's an Iranian strategy to confront Israel with multiple threats on different fronts. Again, Why can't you just accept you've angered all these people, man? It's nothing to do with an Iranian strategy. Again, it's so childish because they're insulting my intelligence and your intelligence with this drivel. It's such a comic book thing. Like, oh, there's this Iranian boogeyman who's hiding behind the scenes and he's pulling these strings in Syria and then pulling some in Gaza. Hold on a second. None of this makes sense because you kept telling us that the Shiites and the Sunnis hate each other. So now you're telling me that Hamas is collaborating with Iran? Wow. I thought Iran are Shia and Hamas are Sunni. So, it's so funny because this is like the garbage they brainwash you with in Western universities, that, it's just the Sunnis and the Shiites hate each other, and that's the reason why the Middle East is quote unquote on fire, and America has nothing to do with this, and Britain has nothing to do with this, and Israel cannot be blamed. It's just a bunch of angry Muslims running around killing each other, and the West is innocent, right? But then at the same time, they come and tell you, look, man, all of these people who are both Sunni and Shia, they seem to be working with each other just because they hate Israel. Wow. Talk about a goddamn contradiction, right? What a contradiction. And again, you have to keep in mind, I told you there was rocket fire from South Lebanon, so that's Hezbollah's turf. No one goes into South Lebanon without their permission. You don't do anything close to firing rockets in South Lebanon without Hezbollah's permission. So obviously, whether it was Hamas, Hezbollah, really, I don't care. That's not the point. The point is that there's definitely some sort of collaboration going on here. There's coordination, and the fact that neither one has come out and said it was us or claimed responsibility, they don't need to. Because like I said, it's a unified front, and that is the message itself. That is the message. So, of course, we have the usual dribble here that, although these are different groups, they're all linked to Iran. And it's good because I mentioned Islamic Jihad, which is another thing I wanted to tell you, by the way. You shouldn't forget there are many groups and factions like in Jenin, in the West Bank. And they also mentioned Islamic Jihad, for example. These groups, they are completely separate from the PLO, or shall we say the Abbas leadership, right? Which a lot of people view as being complicit with the Israeli occupation because they really don't do anything. They're kind of, they're kind of outsourcing. The Israelis are outsourcing the occupation in the West Bank to the PLO. That may be the case, but Islamic Jihad and Jenin Martyrs Brigade and all these factions inside the West Bank have nothing to do with the leadership. And that shows you that you once again, you have a very prominent resistance faction inside of Palestine that is coordinated and very, very present, right? Otherwise, why would we talk about them? Why would the Israelis talk about them? Another thing that I would add, you've had isolated incidents of young men between, let's say, 18 and 35 years old, Palestinian men, with a Kalashnikov, with a pistol, whatever it may be, on their own, just acting on their own and killing Israeli settlers or soldiers. They don't belong to any group. They don't belong to any political party. They are always acting on their own. And nevertheless, it's constant and persistent, right? The Israelis are having a huge headache with this because they not only have to worry about the groups we mentioned here and the countries we mentioned, but inside the occupied West Bank, young men carrying out these isolated attacks. Now, let's ask ourselves a question. Let's all just pause for a second and ask ourselves a question. What do all of these people and groups have in common? The isolated attacks from these young men, completely isolated, uncoordinated attacks. The factions in the West Bank, Hamas, Hezbollah, Syria, Iran, and well, yeah, I already mentioned Hezbollah, South Lebanon, let's say Gaza, right? What do all of these players have in common? Occupation by Israel. That's what they have in common. They are occupied by Israel, or, in the case of Iran is the only one that hasn't experienced that. Iran is from day one, from the 79 revolution, said, we want to support the Palestinians. So the compass here, the main focal point is Palestine it's Jerusalem, and it's the Israeli occupation. So no matter what you do, or you want to call them, or no matter how much they try to rationalize this in the West, in the Western media, this theme is not going to go away. As long as there's an Israeli occupation, you are going to have people resisting it within and without. Period. End of story. And this article is so funny because they try to like rationalize it, and you know, they just can't seem to get to the focal point that, you know, are we the baddies? You know, they just can't ask themselves this question. Maybe it's our behavior that is causing people to fight back. Maybe the way we treat you know, the Palestinians or the Golan Heights, maybe that's it. Or what we did to Lebanon. Nope, there's not 1 second of self-reflection. It's funny because if you're, you know, just from a journalistic viewpoint, when you're talking about a theme like this, you would at least quote what the Iranian side is saying, right? Because for them, Iran is the big boogeyman. They don't even mention Iran's viewpoint. There's nothing in here about that. Like, what are the Iranians saying about the situation, or the Palestinians, or the Syrians? No, nothing. They won't even bring in the word you know, occupation into the narrative. It's really funny. It's really funny. But in any case, going back to what I was saying, I mean, the all of these groups acting at the same time is really what kind of brings you know, the resistance movement together. And you have never seen something like that before. And I don't know what it is. You know, people might say, well, it's because the whole region is changing now. You've had a peace deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. I don't think that's you know, that doesn't really it's one explanation, but it's not the only one. I wouldn't say it's the main one. But you know, just having all of them act at the same time and with this rocket fire, that is unprecedented. Even the Arab League holding a meeting about this is unprecedented. And yes, you should be paying attention. And this is important. It's extremely important. And I think from now on, the Israelis are going to think twice before they start, you know, mugging and beating on worshippers inside Al-Aqsa, because they're literally asking for a regional-wide response, and that's what's happening right now. And everybody knows you don't want to fight a war on 2 or multiple fronts. That's a recipe for disaster. You know, one thing. Let me show you this article from the BBC that was. I think it's from yesterday. No, actually, it's a couple of days ago already. But let's see. So it's related to what we just talked about. Okay. So just quickly, I wanted to go over this BBC article where they talk about how 2 British Israeli women were killed in a West Bank shooting. It's actually 3, right? So basically, you had a Palestinian man, once again, acting completely on his own, doesn't belong to any group or any faction or anything, and he basically shot up a car where there was a mother and her 2 daughters, and all of them are dead now. So it's actually 3 British Israeli women who were killed in this West Bank shooting, okay? So let's see what they say here. They say that this was north of the Jordan Valley, and that you know, these sisters were in their 20s, and their 48-year-old mother and them were immigrants from the UK, right? And the response from the Foreign Office was that they're saddened by the news. Now, look, man, you know, no one is taking pleasure in such a story, but you know, I couldn't help but notice that this family moved from London. It says it in the article. They moved from London to the West Bank. Now, the West Bank is illegally occupied by Israel. Okay, so there's no way to say this is Israel. No. It's Palestine. Even if you accept this ridiculous partition plan, right? Even if you accept it, this is still Palestine, and it's illegally occupied by Israel. So, you know, I'm just stunned by this. Like, you have British citizenship. You know, that is such a privilege, right? To be British born, because I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think on the black market, or depending which black market you go to, it's the highest, it's the most coveted passport in any black market, yes? Why would you move from London, which is relatively safe compared to the West Bank, and insist on living on somebody else's land, on Palestinian land, and risk your entire family? And why would you do that? I just don't understand this. You know, I think it's a symptom of such a sickness of this religious and political extremism, which is Zionism, right? Because here they say they're British Israeli because they happen to have both passports, right? What do you think most Israelis are? They're people who've come from outside, right? They could be Moroccan, they could be Australian, they could be whatever, Ukrainian. Just go look up the list on Wikipedia of every Israeli prime minister. I think every single one of them is from Eastern Europe. You know, either themselves or their parents or grandparents. Every single one, Eastern European, right? So Ukraine, Poland, Russia, whatever. What? And in this case, I mean, they've gone from London to Palestine on somebody else's land on an illegal settlement. Every single Israeli settlement in the West Bank is illegal, whether you like it or not. And risk the. I mean, and why would you do this, right? It's so tragic for everyone involved. But what's even more tragic is the Palestinian, because a Palestinian doesn't have this opportunity to move from the West Bank to London, right? In reverse. You're not going anywhere. You don't even have statehood if you're a Palestinian. You literally don't even have a state, right? There is no Palestinian member state at the UN. Even if you do have the travel documents, it's not a proper passport. And every single port you go into, whether it's a seaport or an airport, they will give you shit, and they will look at your document. They will have no clue what it is, right? And you will feel discriminated against, and they'll just bust your balls. You know, it's how it is. And that's if you have a visa to even go anywhere, right? Like, good luck getting a visa to go to the United Kingdom, never mind moving there and bringing your family with you from Palestine. So you can see the reverse, how unbalanced this situation is, how Palestinians are stuck because this is their land. It's Palestine. They're not going anywhere, whether they like it or not. But you have people from Europe, Zionist settlers, Israeli settlers, who have multiple passports. They have citizenship from multiple countries, and they still insist on going to Palestine and taking somebody else's land, and even if it means losing their entire family. I mean, this is, like I said, it's so emblematic of the sickness of Zionism. How they just insist on doing this. Like, fuck you, by hook or by crook, we are taking your land. And that is the story of Israel. That is Israel in a nutshell. That is Zionism in a nutshell. It's a bunch of Europeans going to Palestine and insisting on living there on somebody else's land, even if it means putting themselves and their own family at risk. And you know, the Palestinians don't have a choice. They have to fight because they're living under occupation, under military rule. They're being treated like shit. They can't go anywhere. You know, whether you like it or not, you're in that environment. You have to resist somehow. But the Israelis, they have a choice, and they still choose to come do this and oppress others and put themselves at risk. It's really a tragic story, but it's the story of Zionism and how how sick it is. That's end of story. One last thing that I would add is, when did this shooting take place? It took place right after the Israelis were going into Al-Aqsa and beating up worshippers, right? Now, like I said, this is not the only time you've had a Palestinian, again, just randomly acting on his own and not affiliated with any group or any faction in response to an incident or another incident, where the Israelis were either bombing Gaza or brutalizing people in Jerusalem. And my point here is that the Israelis now, they have to worry about young Palestinian men in their their teens or their 20s or 30s carrying out these resistance operations, right? And the thing is, how do you stop them? How do you find out where the next one is going to happen? You can't. You can't. It's like playing whack-a-mole, right? From the Israelis' perspective, it's like playing a game of whack-a-mole. But my point here is that this shows you how much of a burden and how upsetting and how literally terrifying the Israeli occupation is to Palestinians, that they randomly are mounting these resistance acts or these acts of resistance against the Israelis. And like I said, they don't have military training. These are not soldiers. They don't belong to any group. They have no affiliation with anyone. The only thing that they have in common is that they are living under Israeli occupation and military rule. That's it. That is it. But of course, you'll never hear that on the news because they want to act like this is not a factor. It's happening in a vacuum. It's just a random Arab who shot up some, Jewish settlers because he hates Jews. That's the narrative they want to feed you, right? No, it's much simpler than that. It's just, people don't like living under military rule. That's it. They don't like living under a dictatorship and under occupation. It's really that simple. It doesn't mean you necessarily agree with what they're doing or you cheer this on. But if you're explaining politics and you're trying to chronicle what's happening, you have to mention this. It's not something that exists outside of Palestine. No, it's something central to the Palestinian issue. It's not a coincidence that this happened while there were rockets coming in from Gaza, while there were rockets coming in from Syria, while there were rockets coming in from South Lebanon. These things are not a coincidence. Do you understand? That's my point. So I see we've got 500 people watching. Please make sure you guys have hit the like button. It's the thumbs up under the video. Let's talk about some nice things, because there's actually some good diplomacy happening as we speak. And I'm not being sarcastic. There's actually some good stuff happening, it's nice to see that, in contrast to the war in Ukraine, where there's a lot of suffering happening. It's nice to see some diplomacy taking place. So let me get into the next segment. One moment. By the way, I should probably add just one last thing. When people talk about the French resistance or the Dutch resistance, or any European resistance against German occupation, I mean, there's nothing nice about I know it's glamorized a lot, right? And understandably so, because people were fighting against a very brutal regime, right? They were fighting against Nazis. But nobody stops and thinks like, well, do you think those people were racist, or maybe they had some kind of they just happened to hate Germans, and that's why they were they're blowing up German convoys or something? No, it's very clear. You see, those people were fighting to liberate their country, and end of story. So I don't know why this perplexes people when it comes to Palestine. They just can't fucking grasp it, or they don't want to grasp it. Again, with Ukraine, that's happening right now. Nobody says like, oh, you're a terrorist for fighting against Russian soldiers. They're in your fucking country, man. Like, no one is calling you a terrorist. But when it comes to Palestinians, they're all terrorists or gunmen or some weird definition. It's much simpler than that. It's really much simpler than that. And Anyway, let me I said I'd move on to the next one. Let's go to the next one. Okay. So some very good news. You've had a Saudi delegation go to Sana'a, to the Yemeni capital, and I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this, but there's actually some real diplomacy going on, and some hope of peace, right? So here's the Saudi ambassador to Yemen, but he's not meeting with the Saudi-backed government, right, or the internationally recognized government. He's meeting here with with the Houthi rebels, as they're called, right? It just so happens that 80% of Yemenis live with these rebels. So, you know, I think it's time you start recognizing them as a government, because they are. I know that wasn't the Saudi position until now, but it is, right? And you can see them actually meeting face to face. And why is this different from the last couple of years? Why is it different? Well, before, you know, there's been a truce. You know, you've had multiple truces or ceasefires, but they weren't really applied. You know, they weren't actually put into practice. Now things are actually being put into practice, and this is because of what China recently did. You know, China got Iran and Saudi Arabia to sit down and hash things out, and they've normalized ties. There's been a rapprochement. And that is great, not just for Saudi Arabia and Iran, but you can see also for Yemen, because Yemen has been kind of, I wouldn't say caught between the two, because they like to frame it like, you know, Iran was tugging from one side, and it's kind of, Iran like shares responsibility for what's happening in Yemen, which is ridiculous. That you know, Iran obviously supports their struggle, but, you know, Saudi Arabia is the one that has to really atone for all this. And it's not me saying that, it's the Houthis who are saying really, you know, very clearly, unequivocally, that you have to rebuild everything that you've destroyed. And you know, the country is rather, you know, in tatters. And when it comes to the ports, you know, I did extensive reporting about the oil embargo against Yemen, right? So basically you would have these ships carrying fuel on their way to Yemen, but the Saudi-led coalition would kind of step in, even though they had clearance from the UN, these fuel ships, the Saudis would grab them and take them to the side and just hold them for no reason except to screw Yemen, just to hold them for months, sometimes even over a year. And, you know, by the time that fuel ship that fuel has actually reached people at the pump, the cost has doubled, because the you know, when the ship is not being used, the person who owns the ship is gonna you know, basically they're called demurrage costs. And you can read all my stuff because on Substack, because I did a report with a Yemeni economist, right? He's Oxford graduate, World Bank. He knows the ropes, and we sat down and did this report together, and we really showed like how even if you take, even in the best of cases, the country is being destroyed by this this siege, right? This Saudi siege. And so, you know, like I said, in the past, when there would be a ceasefire or a truce, Hodeidah, which is the main seaport, they would never really open it to Saudis. And so, you know, this siege would continue, and people would still have to pay, you know, astronomical costs for medicine or for food or to keep the lights on, because everything depends on fuel. So now the Houthis are saying very clearly to the Saudis, you have to really open the airport at Sana'a and also the seaport in Hodeidah. Hodeidah is very close to Sana'a. It's and you know, as I mentioned at the beginning of the segment, 80% of the Yemeni population live in the vicinity. So, you know, it just from a geographical point of view, it makes no sense to use any of the other ports when you're bringing in fuel to the country, right? So there was a very clear, you know, screw you attitude from the Saudis. Like, we are not going to let you use this port, even though everybody lives near this port, even though the capital is near here. No. We're going to reroute all the ships here after we've held them for months and make everything, you know, all the costs climb. So, you know, the Houthis are saying very clearly, the airport has to be opened. Hodeidah has to be opened. There has to be a prisoner swap. So they're also talking about that. And, you know, let's face it, this is thanks to China, because if China hadn't got Saudi Arabia and Iran to just sit down and hash things out, I don't think this, you know, the climate in the region and would have allowed for it. Okay. And internationally, it just wouldn't have allowed for it. But now it's happening. It's quite extraordinary, I must say. And what's funny to me is how the CIA director, Bill Burns, his reaction to all this is to go to Saudi Arabia and basically give them a mouthful. Like, how dare you make peace with Iran behind our backs or without telling us? How dare you make peace with Yemen and Syria without telling us? So this is from CNN, and they're referencing a Wall Street Journal piece that said Burns, so the CIA director, expressed frustration with Saudi officials over Riyadh's recent rapprochement with Iran through a diplomatic deal brokered by China, as well as the kingdom's openings with Syria. Well, I mean, frustration is pretty clear. I mean, my only frustration with all this is that it didn't happen sooner. I think Mr. Burns has a different type of bone to pick with the Saudis. I think he's, the Americans, what was the word he used? They were blindsided by this or something like that. You can read it in the Wall Street Journal. It's really funny, like you would think that something bad was, were happening. No. You're making peace. We can't have that. Remember, the United States and a lot of people who are in Joe Biden's administration now helped destroy Yemen. They helped start the war on Yemen. They sold, Donald Trump as well. So we're talking Obama administration, Trump administration, and then I think the Biden administration really, they're from the first one, which is my point. They sold so many guns and bombs and you name it to the Saudis, right? Everything. They made, what was it? I think it's $115 billion worth of weapons under Obama, and then Donald Trump did $300 billion. So it's at least $415 billion worth of weapons that the United States sold to Saudi Arabia to use against Yemen, right? So they have a lot of blood on their hands. But once again, just going back to the oil embargo, what I was talking about with the point that we were trying to get across in our report is that this oil embargo against Yemen is so bad, it's just as bad as the bombs, if not worse. Let that, sink in, so you can understand the gravity of the whole situation. But here you've had also, this is from, I think from Reuters, they say that Jake Sullivan, who is, again, one of these war criminals, he's now Biden's national security advisor. So he had a talk on the phone, right? This is a few hours ago with the Saudi crown prince to discuss Yemen and Iran, right? So they're still not over it, apparently. They're not. I don't think they'll be getting over this anytime soon. Let me tell you why. Because not only is this good news for Yemen and good news for the region, but if you're China, wow. On the world stage, you're the king, right? You're the king. I think the United States, to a certain extent, they've always tried to make themselves, I know this sounds funny to say, but they've tried to make themselves look like the real peacemakers and diplomats, right? I think Bill Clinton with Arafat and the Israelis, there is to a certain extent, some kind of effort to look like, oh, we are the ones who get people together and make them hash things out, and we are the peacemakers, which again sounds ridiculous if you look at the United States foreign policy. But now all of that is gone out the window, right? Like there's nothing from the United States or from the UK that matches what China is doing, right? On an economic scale as well, but just to come here and get Iran and Saudi Arabia, right, who we've been taught and for years by the media are these like arch enemies and arch rivals, and in every Western university they brainwash you with this poison that somehow it's a Sunni and Shiite thing, like that, just a bunch of crazy Muslims running around who hate each other. Apparently, China made all of that go away. Wow. Well, guess what? Now China, they are the peacemakers. They're the ones who look rational and calm and productive. And the United States does not. The United States just profited from this and did nothing whatsoever to get Iran and Saudi Arabia to hash things out, right? China's the one who did that. So Beijing, I mean, wow, you know, I'm saying this, you know, seriously, congratulations, and you know, I'm not saying it's an easy thing. You know, I don't buy this. Oh, it's a Sunni Shiite thing. That's rubbish. That's when they tell you that. When they tell you, oh, it's Sunni and Shia, this is the go-to excuse for the West, right? To make themselves look innocent, right? Like, oh, we had nothing to do with this mess in Iraq. We had nothing to do with you know, inflaming these sectarian tensions. We had nothing to do with this. It's just the locals, the natives and the locals. They're cuckoo, you know. Some of them are Sunni, some of them are Shia. And they don't like each other. That's the reason. It's not because, you know, we have anything to do with that. America's innocent. Britain is innocent. You know, France is innocent. We have nothing to do with it. So, you know, I think the worst part is that it's not just those governments, the governments of these countries who say that. You have actual academics who believe this garbage and teach this in universities, right? They teach it as if it's set in stone, and it's the only explanation for any sort of you know, discontent between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and in the region as well, right? So they'll tell you that Hezbollah is supported by Iran because Hezbollah is Shia, and that's the only reason. And in Yemen, right, perfect example. The only reason Iran supports the Houthis is because they happen to be Shia. This is ridiculous. How do you explain Iran's support for Venezuela? Are Venezuela also that's a Shiite country as well? What about Hamas? Are they also Shiite? Come on, man, stop this nonsense. You know, you don't insult my intelligence with this drivel. So I think I'll just add one more thing. It's not just China who's managed to put things together. We have to be honest. The Saudis are cutting their losses. I reported to you how the Houthis, Yemen, were able to strike Aramco. Aramco is the Saudi oil company. Yeah, right. The props. You know, it's the top dog. So how the hell were the Houthis able to do this? They did it with drones. Now remind me, who is supplying drones to Russia right now? Who is building the most sophisticated drones? It's Iran. So Iran is the one that helped the Houthis in this regard with the transfer of technology, right? I wouldn't say the military support is as great as they claim in the media, but it certainly exists to a certain extent. And the fact that they were able to strike Aramco and just really embarrass the Saudis during the Formula One races, and also strike the UAE. We're talking, what is it, 2,000 kilometers? It was some ridiculous distance, right? Where I mean, they tragically killed a few workers who have nothing to do with this, but you know, this tool in the hands of Yemen all of a sudden changed the landscape on the battlefield. And the Saudis found themselves, you know, disliked on the international stage because everyone could see the humanitarian disaster that they had caused in Yemen. Militarily, they were struggling. And now they were also they were getting a taste of their own medicine, and well, they were beginning to actually see this war at their doorstep in the UAE and in Saudi Arabia. So these new realities, plus the war in Ukraine, and when I say war in Ukraine, I don't mean the war, I mean the ripple effect it's had, where you're seeing a multipolar world come together. All of this combined, I think the Saudis said, you know what, let's cut our losses. Let's sit down with Iran. Let's sit down with Syria. Let's sit down with the Houthis. And that's it. You know, we make peace and we move forward. And it's a smart move because whatever this multipolar world is going to be, Saudi Arabia is going to want to be a part of this, you know, new reality. And now is the time to get on that train. It's now or never. And they have made I mean, it's not just about, you know, you shouldn't think of it in business terms. It's a moral thing. It's an ethical thing. They should have stopped this war a long time ago and made peace a long time ago. But, better now, better late than never. So I'm glad to see some diplomacy happening. Contrast this with the war in Ukraine, right? Where there's no diplomacy happening and there's only destruction. It's so good to see a different model being proposed. And that is exactly what the Chinese have done. And I'm glad everyone who's going to, be crucial to this multipolar world is really adopting and accepting diplomacy as a model. That's what we need. We need more of this. This is the way. This is the way. One last thing that I would add, which is, one last thing that I would, I know this is perhaps obvious, but one last thing that I would add, why the Saudis, decided at this stage to make peace is there was no U.S. support anymore. And you might be thinking, well, that's weird because who sold them all these weapons? Wasn't it the U.S.? Yeah, you bet. It was the U.S., it was Canada, it was the UK, it was Germany. All of them have blood on their hands in Yemen, unfortunately. But you heard the Saudis multiple times complaining about how there wasn't enough support, right? So they wanted even more. And this means intelligence, this means logistical support. It's a wide array of things. And they felt that the United States was letting them down in this regard, right? And I think that is also something that you should take into account and something that we should mention because it's very important. Right? It's very important. You've been hearing this for almost 2 years now since Biden took office. And you remember Biden said he wanted to make the Saudis a pariah. I mean, that's a joke because he never did. And when he went to the Saudi Arabia, he fist bumped MBS. That was the extent of it, right? But nevertheless, for them, one of the reasons why he didn't get an oil deal and why they cut production at OPEC, one of those reasons was the lack of U.S. support in the war in Yemen. And so, ultimately, the Saudis made the smart move. They cut their losses and moved on. So this brings us to Syria. I have very good news regarding Saudi Arabia and Syria. I couldn't believe it myself, honestly. This is from 2 hours ago. So let me get that up on the screen for you. Let's see here. Right. So, like I said, the Saudis, they made peace with Iran. They made peace, they're making peace with Yemen, God willing. And now, this is from 2 hours ago, you have the Syrian foreign minister landing in Saudi Arabia and being greeted here by the deputy Saudi foreign minister. I mean, what a sight for sore eyes. When's the last time you saw anything like this? This is huge. This is actually huge. This picture made me smile because, like I said, you contrast that with what's happening in Ukraine and the situation there, which is very unfortunate, where there's no diplomacy, there's nothing of the sort. You're seeing now in the Middle East a lot of diplomacy, and I think if China hadn't stepped up to the plate and gotten Iran and Saudi Arabia to hash things out, the situation in the region, the climate, just wouldn't have allowed for the Saudis to make peace with Yemen or with Syria. Okay, so yes, these two things are tied together. And I know you're going to have these pseudo pretentious academics who once again put on their spectacles and say, well, it's because Assad is an Alawite and the Houthis are Shia and they are linked to Iran. That's why they were given the okay from Tehran to make peace with the Saudi. Jesus Christ. I mean, how do you make a living with this drivel? This is incredible to me, right? They always try to make it about Shia and Sunni and just, it's this mindset that, the West has nothing to do with this and it's all religious. And please don't insult my intelligence. Don't insult the viewers' intelligence with this nonsense. There's nothing to do with that. this is the Saudis. They're looking towards that petro yuan, right? Not petrodollar, petro yuan, and they're looking towards the multipolar world. They want to be a part of that. But it's not only business, it's also an opportunity for the Arab world to heal, because, you know, the other reason why this is significant is because, you know, the Saudis tried to overthrow the Syrian government, right? I think it's a very difficult thing. And again, I'm not saying they're innocent, but it must be so, you know, unnerving for the Saudis to kind of bite their tongue now and just sit down and, you know, smile and act friendly with people they tried to overthrow. It's kind of funny. It's kind of comical. But hey, it's good. This is good for the region and you know, for the world. And you know, Saudi Arabia is now actually trying to get Syria a seat at the table during this Arab League summit that's going to happen next month in May, right? So it's kind of funny because I think Qatar and Kuwait are the ones you know, that are putting their foot down and saying, no, we don't want Syria there. We don't want Syria at this meeting, or you know, to resume its membership in the Arab League. And the Saudis are the ones that are in favor. It's kind of funny, really. Here's another photo, by the way, another epic photo of the Syrian foreign minister in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, just today, just a few hours ago. What an epic photo, really. It's one for the history books. As they say, it's the first visit by a senior Syrian diplomat to the Saudi kingdom in more than a decade. And they will also reestablish ties and reopen their embassies. That's a given. Remember, Saudi Arabia funded a lot of the groups. As I said, they were trying to overthrow the government. You know, not just in name, but in practice, right? In reality, they were funding a lot of these hardline extreme. I love this word hardline. It could mean everything and nothing at once. Well, in the case of Saudi Arabia, you know, you already know which way they're leaning in terms of these groups. Let's say a lot of them are hard to differentiate with Al-Qaeda, right? But again, I'm not here to rub their noses in it or anything like that. But, you know, if you're in the Syrian opposition right now, you must be like screaming inside because, I mean, there's no one left but Turkey, like to prop you up now. But, you know, I'm not here to rub anyone's nose in this. I'm just giving you the news. So foreign ministers from Iraq, Jordan, Egypt, and the Gulf Cooperation Council will gather in Jeddah on Friday. And again, just so you know, the GCC includes Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Oman, Qatar, and Kuwait, right? So mainly the Arab countries in the Persian Gulf. So as I said, they want to bring in Syria on this Arab League summit meeting in Riyadh on May 19th. But why are they gathering on Friday already? The sole purpose of this meeting on Friday is to discuss whether they should have Syria at the Arab League summit, right? So that's really what it's about. Now, also some more good news, which I just saw. Tunisia, right? They have said they will resume ties with Syria, and it's actually happening. You know, they're going to reopen their embassies. So the Syrian government said today they'll be reopening the Syrian embassy in Tunisia. So it's very good because Morocco, for example, I think unfortunately has you know, advanced or strengthened its ties with Israel. It's even buying Israeli weaponry, but ties with Syria at the moment, very bad, not looking good, right? At least with Tunisia, things are getting better, right? So, you know, that again, this is a big plus because here, you know, you can see China, Iran, Saudi Arabia, you know, saying they'll reopen their embassies. This is very, very good. But you have to consider that I'm speaking to you about Syria in terms of, you know, moving on from this war that's gone on since 2011 and being reintegrated into the Arab League, which is very important, right? Syria is a founding member. It's you know, when Gaddafi gave that amazing speech at the Arab League, he did it in Damascus, right? He told them, watch out, They went. If they dare to come after Saddam, they'll dare to come after you. And he was right. He was next in line. So, you know, why is it important for Syria to be brought back into the Arab League? Is it because Gaddafi gave good speeches there? No, it's because the you know what Europe loves to see, what Washington loves to see, and what Israel loves to see is a divided Arab world. You know, I don't remember the channel's name. You can go look this up on YouTube. You know, there are people who make these YouTube videos with hypotheticals like, what if all the Arab countries got together and formed a military and so on? And you can see, dude, this would be the third largest country on earth or something like that. They'd have the best, actually third largest country in population is not true. I think he said third largest economy and one of the best militaries. My point here is really that if you did have a united Arab world, you're looking at a power, like and I'm not just talking about a regional power, a global superpower. The Russians, you know, the Americans, the Chinese, people think of them as global superpowers, or the United States as a hyperpower. Nobody thinks of, you know, a unified Arab world. Now, I'm not saying the Arab League is gonna, you know, tomorrow morning is gonna unite and become, you know, one country. No, but having you know, Arab states not talking to each other, warring with each other, working against each other. This is a dream come true for any colonizer. So, you know, that's why they drew the current borders. Remember, I always remind you, you know, Syria's borders, as they are today, no one in Syria drew them. Those are French and British lines, but for some reason, they've decided to keep them, right? And in Africa, the same thing. No one from Africa or in Africa drew those borders, right? Those are European colonizers who drew them. So it's a straight up, you know, divide and conquer. But having Syria, you know, brought back on the international stage and in the Arab world, it has to begin with the Arab world. And, you know, whether they like it or not, the Houthis in Yemen, not going anywhere. Bashar al-Assad is not going anywhere. And you have to ask yourself, you know, what was all of this destruction for? It's a shame. It's a shame, right? Again, here you can see they mention Syria and Tunisia agreed to reopen their respective embassies. Both countries said on Wednesday. As I mentioned, this is just breaking from a few hours ago. So, you know, in the span of a few months, you've seen Saudi Arabia, Tunisia, Jordan. I'm losing count now, but yeah. So Jordan, and then I think it was, well, Oman have always been good, right? So one thing I forgot to mention earlier is that Oman sent a delegation with the Saudi delegation to Yemen, right? So that's important to mention. But, you know, you've had so many Arab countries in the span of a few months normalize ties with Syria, or shall we say, reestablish ties with Syria. So that is significant, right? I've lost count of the number of videos we've done about this, but every time something happened, I you know, kept you guys updated. So this is the latest one, and I think it's basically picking up like a snowball, right? So from here on out, if Saudi Arabia has done it, it becomes a lot easier for other Arab countries to take the step and you know, engage with Syria and, you know, have a rapprochement there. So let's see what comes next. But so far, well done, China. You've done quite a bit of good for the region, you know, I should say. Well done. So, give me 1 second, guys, to get through to your comments. And I haven't finished yet. We still have a few more things to go through. But I mean, I got to be honest. I was not expecting this. This is really funny, and good. You know, I wasn't expecting to see a Syrian foreign minister in Saudi Arabia so soon. Wow. I mean, were you guys expecting to see? Let's step back a second before we get to Saudi Arabia and Syria. Iran and Saudi Arabia. That one is, you know, that was great, right? Who could have seen this coming? Who could have seen this coming? No one expected this stuff. I mean, shit. If this is the model that the Chinese have, sign me up, because I'm seeing nothing but diplomacy here and business and you know, good times. Who the hell wants to be at war all the time? What kind of model is that? Screw that, right? If this is the choice between, yeah, come on, man, it's an easy choice. No one wants to. Give me a second. I said I'd read your comments. Give me 1 second. Hussein, thanks very much. Hussein has been making it rain in the chat. Hussein said that, well, you said coward monsters, the Zio project is crumbling. I think it's very clear when you sent that super chat. It was when I was talking about Israel. By the way, one thing I didn't mention, which is kind of obvious, Netanyahu is having a lot of trouble at home, right? You see people coming out and protesting all the time. So he has to worry about internal issues, right? And on top of that, you have everything else that I talked about. So I mean, it's not a good time to be an Israeli prime minister. Let's put it that way. Is it? Is it ever? Hussein says Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Yemen, the resistance. Absolutely, but I think it's expanding, right? I would include, of course, Venezuela, but like I said, I think it's going to grow, and you know, it's nice to see the multipolar world coming into place. Let's hope it's a good one, because obviously, you know, nothing's set in stone, but so far. Like, again, let me bring up this picture. It's looking good. It's looking pretty good. Everybody's smiling. Everybody's happy. That's good enough for me. I really don't think people appreciate how spectacular it is that you have the Saudi ambassador to Yemen in Sana'a, not in Aden or anywhere else, in Sana'a with the Houthis. Wow. Not just because they were at war with each other. Keep in mind, the Saudis lost. You know, like they lost internationally on the international stage. So you know, politically, it's been very bad for them. They've lost on the battlefield because the drone technology that was given to the Yemenis. And let me just add, as a side note, it's not just because of the drones. They weren't, you know, the Houthis, they fought very hard, and they've had to fight against Al Qaeda as well. You know, you don't just have the Saudis and their coalition, which are a threat to Yemen. You also have Al Qaeda and multiple you know, and various factions that they still have to deal with. It's not over. But you know, they had no choice. So I don't think people appreciate how important it is that they make peace, and what I would stress the most is the humanitarian situation there, which, you know, was not just caused by bombs. Like I said, this oil embargo is really a huge contributor. TY, thank you for the super chat. It says this is from Pepe. The brick, so the BRICS with a double S is basically BRICS Plus with Iran and Saudi Arabia. Indeed. I think everyone wants to become a BRICS member now. I don't know if the Saudis will get there first, but Charles says the sad thing is the United States has to go to war with China to save its empire. You're right from their perspective, but in terms of the timeline, let's hope that's not what happens, right? Let's hope that something, that cooler heads prevail. Yeah, that would be good for everybody. But yeah, that's part of what's happening with Russia and this proxy war in Ukraine. Oh shit, our model is crumbling. Let's cook up some nonsense. Bruce, hey, I can see from the green names in the chat. The green names in the chat are members on the channel. So thank you, Bruce, for being a member, and also I think Hussein as well. Thank you guys for signing up. It helps a lot. And if you want to support the show, people are donating in the chat, but you can also donate on PayPal or become a member on Patreon. Give me 1 second to see if we've got a new Patreon member. I see we've got Lukazi, who just joined on Patreon. So I owe them a crab dance.
Clap for that, you stupid bastard. And Corn Pop was a bad dude. And he ran a bunch of bad boys.
Listen, fuckhead, you have fucking crossed the line. Claiming I'm the enemy. You got that, you goddamn son of a bitch?
I don't give a fuck what you think, bitch.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
Cut that bitch off.
Thank you for Iron Dome, which is a technical marvel.
والله انت كلاب بصراحة يعني. ماشي نشتغل عادي.
We lied, we cheated, we stole.
China.
And you ain't black.
There's always the macro and then there's the micro.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
You talking to me?
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll have 2 number 9s. Number 9 large.
we got him.
I put myself, I know it's not.
I've fallen and I can't get up. Disgusting!
Why you texting? Why? You're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay. Okay.
Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you!
Man, Biden is such a character. You ain't black. Man, this guy has lost his goddamn mind. There's the lights are on, but nobody's home. There's like an empty goddamn nut there. There's nothing. Jesus. He surprised me. I didn't think he was gonna win. I'll give him that. Christ. I thought, a horse cart could have won against him. What is happening, man? Anyway, let's continue, my friends. Let's continue. These highly coveted leaked Pentagon documents. What is in them? What are they about? Is this a psyop? Find out next time on the Twilight Zone. No, we're gonna find out now, and this is the Twilight Zone. Give me a second. I want to make sure you can read everything. Okay, wonderful. So, the leaked Pentagon documents. Shall we begin? What are the major takeaways? So, this is a piece from Al Jazeera. I thought it was actually it was put well. It was well put together, honestly, because there's so much about this, and you might get lost because you'll see like really grainy photos of these documents where you can't read anything. This is the best that I could do, right? So I've been going through them one by one. I mean, they're really not that special. There's nothing special in here, yeah, wow. Israel is selling some weapons to Morocco. Who gives a crap? We know they're working with Morocco. We know that, by the way, this stuff is like at least a month old. These documents are at least 1 month old. So I know Ukraine have come out and said that they've been forced to change their their battle plans and this spring offensive that's supposed to happen. I mean, we're almost summer, but okay. Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot in here. There's a lot, and let's go back to the article. I'm going off on a rant now because these pictures were so goddamn grainy and nothing was in them. But okay. So the Pentagon has confirmed that the military documents appear to contain sensitive and highly classified material. Again, word to the wise, when the Americans say highly classified, they classify literally everything. Maybe someone went to McDonald's and they would classify that too. I'm not even kidding. Nevertheless, the Pentagon has skirted categorical claims over the authenticity of the documents, right? So this is the big question, because there's one section inside of the documents that people have been photoshopping, and it's about losses in Ukraine, right? I'm curious, you're curious, everyone would like to know, what's the Pentagon think? What are their estimates? Well, look, man, people are making it seem that the Russian losses are higher, and others are making it seem like the Ukrainian losses are higher. Now, from what I can gather, the Guardian make mention of this, right? They say two versions of those documents, one of which had been crudely digitally altered to understate Russian casualties and overstate Ukrainian ones, were passed around among observers of the war. So, according to the Guardian, they think, and they speak as if the version where Russian losses are higher is the correct version. You can see one of these has been photoshopped, right? So they're saying that this one on the left is actually the real one. And let's zoom in, and I know, again, this is grainy and annoying, but forgive me, it's the one on see, we're already getting our goddamn things mixed up. Basically, let me just read this to you. The Pentagon estimates that the Russians have lost, what is it, around 60,000 troops. That's quite a lot, right? So they call them KIA, killed in action. So they say there are between 35 to 60,000 Russian killed. I mean, that's quite broad, but nevertheless. And then 72 fighters / bombers, 82 rotary wing, so that's helicopters, planes, bombers, and helicopters, respectively, and then 6,000 ground vehicles. Okay. And for Ukraine, the Pentagon estimates there are 16 to 17,000 KIA killed in action. So you can see here that the Russian losses are significantly higher, right? Now, you could interpret this in multiple ways. You could say that, well, the Russians are losing. If that's your metric of winning and losing, then yes, the Russians are losing. They're certainly losing more men, according to the Pentagon. But someone, especially on the Russian side, might look at this and say, no. This is just proof that Russia is able to sustain more casualties, to take a more punches and still remain in the fight. Both of those assessments, wouldn't be wrong. In any case, I'm just telling you, I'm just trying to clear up this issue about which one of these is doctored, which one of these has been photoshopped, because it's been quite an issue online, and reasonably so. But the Guardian and most of these mainstream outlets are saying that no, if you see these documents online, the one where the Russian losses are higher, that is the legitimate one. I mean, again, make of that what you will. I'm just telling you what's happening, okay? Oh, you'll get my opinion in a second. Going back to Al Jazeera. The British MOD, the Ministry of Defense, they said that you should not take these supposed or purported US leaks at face value. And the reason they say that is because according to these documents, more than half of the foreign special forces in Ukraine are British. Again, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised either way. What difference does it make? We know that just like in Syria and everywhere else, you're going to have SAS and you're going to have American special forces. Does the number really matter? I'd certainly be interested to know. But Latvia, they're saying here, has 17 personnel. 17. And that's the second highest number, apparently, out of all NATO countries. France is 14. The US and France have 14 and 15 special forces, respectively. So there you go. And Netherlands, 0. Now, let's go to South Korea. This has caused a big stink in South Korea, these leaks, because to cut the story short, the documents show that the Americans are spying on their allies, South Korea. Wow. Like, do you really need classified documents to fucking figure that one out? Of course, they're spying on South Korea. And so the South Koreans, I don't know if this is, a typical behavior of a U.S. puppet. It's to just immediately come out and say, no, we are not being spied on. We swear it. But, that's what they did. Here's a video.
미국 최고의 정보기관이 불법 스파이 활동을 우리나라와 같은 동맹국을 대상으로 자행해 온 것에 대해 깊은 유감을 표합니다. 명백한 진상 확인과 더불어 다시는 이런 일이 없도록 할 것을 강하게 촉구합니다. 미국 최고의 정보기관이
Just to put that into perspective, when it comes to Germany, Angela Merkel, she had her personal phone spied on, and Germany, I think, is well, it depends which way you look at it. I was going to say Germany are a much more important ally than South Korea, but once again, depends. It depends on your perspective. They're both U.S. colonies, really, but that was a big, a much bigger stink than this, and still nothing happened. So you shouldn't be surprised that the United States spy on their allies. To be frank, everyone spies on their allies. Everyone. This is not an American thing. They didn't invent it. Before there was any United States on the face of the earth, people were spying on their allies. It's just how things work, unfortunately. There's also a section about the United States spying on Zelensky. Well, man, if I give somebody $80 billion, I'm definitely going to spy on them. I mean, that's just my thing. But no, the funny thing is that the Americans don't want any oversight where that money's going. That's the irony. But yeah, they're spying on Zelensky. So what? I think he knows that. He's not stupid. In here, they talk about Serbia agreeing to arm Ukraine. Now, Serbia's coming out saying that that's not true, right? There was also a section here about Egypt. So one leaked document, which is dated February 17th, and obtained by the Washington Post, claimed that Egypt planned to supply Russia with rockets and munitions. So this is interesting because, Egypt, they have a stockpile of really old munitions. Now, that is what Russia needs at the moment. These are the kinds of munitions that North Korea would have been supplying them with, were that to be the case or not. But when it comes to Egypt, everyone is saying this is fake. The Russians are saying that it's not true. The Americans are saying it's not true. And Egypt are saying it's not true. So Sisi, the Egyptian president, in this document, he's basically telling them to keep the production secret and avoid problems with the West and blah, blah, blah. I mean, why would he say that if this is true? It's because Egypt receives a ton of aid from the United States, Basically, they got Egypt cornered. Egypt has the largest, out of all the Arab countries, Egypt is the most populated or populous. So you have a lot of mouths to feed, right? So Egypt depends on this aid from the United States to feed its population. That's, among other reasons, why Egypt has no choice but to maintain ties with Israel. And this is why, if they were supplying the Russians, they would definitely have to keep that secret. But everybody is saying it's not true. Oh, actually, they say here, by the way, the military, Egypt is one of the world's top recipients of U.S. military aid, receiving $1.3 billion in military financing annually. But what I was talking about was, again, not military aid. I meant to in general, right? So everyone is saying this is not true. So I mean, you can make of that what you will. I was just thinking of hypotheticals. Let's say, I mean, it could be true. It could still be true. This Washington Post story. But for it to be true, the Russians would have to be lying, as would the Egyptians, and trying to say, no, this is garbage. We have no agreement with each other, and the Americans would have to genuinely believe that Egypt is not supplying the Russians, or have no evidence to support it. Then in that case, yes, it would be true. But do you really think the Americans wouldn't know if whether Egypt was giving artillery rounds to the Russians? Of course they would fucking know. So it's a very narrow hypothetical situation. So if you ask me, I think it's bullshit. I could be wrong, but if everybody's saying it's wrong, it's probably wrong. Now, again, they talk about how they're monitoring Zelensky. Again, yeah, that was obvious. They say that these documents suggest the U.S. has penetrated the Russian military. No, actually, it's not true. Not Russian military only. The military intelligence is very specific. So and much more damning, right? And the Wagner group. So that if these documents are true, that's what they say. And about the Mossad, so they say also in these documents that the Israeli intelligence service, the Mossad, are supporting these government protests against Netanyahu, right? So I told you just a bit earlier that these are a big headache for Netanyahu. You got people coming out every week doing these huge protests against him. I mean, the response from his office immediately was to say that this is bullshit. Obviously, he's going to say that because it's embarrassing. He's not going to come out and say, yes, this is true. My own intelligence service, which, remember, as prime minister in Israel, when the Mossad want to assassinate someone, the prime minister is the one who signs off on it. Okay, so he is in direct control of the intelligence agency. Okay, he would have to basically, be admitting that he has no control over it, and that they, I don't know what to make of that story. I'm sure you have people in the Mossad who actually support the protests and others who don't. The way that you should really look at it is that even if you got rid of Ben Gvir and Netanyahu tomorrow morning, Israel is still an occupying force. It doesn't matter how left you make it, right? A leftist Zionist is still a fucking Zionist. And that land is Palestinian and Syrian, whether you like it or not. It doesn't matter how left or vegan or goddamn, progressive you are as an Israeli. If you're on Palestinian or Syrian land, you're on Palestinian and Syrian land. There's no way around it. Sorry. Anyway, was there anything else? Yeah, this is kind of funny. The origin of these documents. So where did they appear? I'm sure I'm glad you asked. I thought you were never going to. These documents, as far as we know, appeared on Discord. Now, for those of you who know what Discord is, this is kind of funny. But Discord is basically a chat that's used mainly by gamers, right? It's actually very good for gaming and so on. It's well integrated. So the idea that you would have Pentagon documents on a gaming, social media platform is kind of, it's ridiculous, right? I'm not saying it's not true. It's just really funny. It's just other people are saying now that actually it was on a Minecraft server, which makes it even more funny. Which again, for those of you who don't know, Minecraft is a game. So people are, come on, man. I really don't know. But they're quite angry about them, and it's so weird because you have got all these countries rushing to say none of this is true. But maybe some of it's true. And everyone's just kind of looking at this and saying, what the fuck is wrong with you people? It's really funny. It's so funny. Because I've never seen anything like this before, they want these documents to be true and not true at the same time, and you have people photoshopping them also. So you have basically three different stories. It's a laughing stock, honestly. So the U.S. Justice Department have opened a criminal investigation into how the slides were obtained and leaked. The CIA director has called the leak deeply unfortunate. So this is after his visit to Saudi Arabia to complain about, about them making peace with Syria. How dare you? And the Pentagon, are also, they're also angry, but at the same time, they're telling journalists not to cover this. So here's John Kirby. Enjoy.
Again, without confirming the validity of the documents, this is information that has no business in the public domain. It has no business, if you don't mind me saying, on the pages of front pages of newspapers or.
But why not? But why not? Okay, of course I'm gonna bust your balls, John. Just trying to do my job as well. But I really like this guy. He's such a Office character, right? It's like he's straight out of The Office. It's like, how could this guy be the Pentagon spokesperson? He's just a cartoon character. So I'm really laying into him now. No, but listen, why doesn't it have any business in the public domain, John? Is it true or not? We keep hearing how fake these documents are and then not really. And which one is it? Are you spying on Zelensky in South Korea? I know you are. Or not? Now, are the Egyptians giving the Russians weapons? That's one. That one I'd really like to know, because everyone's denying it. And now the cynics are going, that's why it's true, because everyone denied it. It must be true. No, I really want to know how Sisi would get away with giving the Russians weapons in a war where Russia, in a war where you have NATO fighting Russia without the Americans finding out. I mean, he must be a real moron to do that if it's true. And the Americans, I don't know, guys, help me out. What is he saying here?
Again, without confirming the validity of the documents, this is information that has no business in the public domain.
Okay, so it's true. Because if it were fake, then you wouldn't care if it's in the public domain. I don't know. I'm trying to work out what is going through his mind.
It has no business, if you don't mind me saying, on the pages of front pages of newspapers or on television. It is.
What about Discord then? I got you there. What about Discord or a Minecraft server? You didn't say that.
It's not intended for public consumption, and it should not be out there.
Okay, now I really have to stop you there, because he's saying it's not intended for public consumption. Jesus Christ, I've never seen in my entire life a government document that actually looked like it was intended for public consumption. I mean, just look at this thing. It's literally made. It's like a fucking brochure. Would you like an F-16 jet from Turkey? Well, look at this thing. Every single one of them. It really, really definitely looks like it was intended for public consumption. Every other government document I've seen is like some boring black and white bullshit typed out in Microsoft Word and printed out and stamped with a million things. This one has graphics and colors, and it's got logos and shit. Man, come on. This really looks like it was made for public consumption. I'm obviously playing. I'm playing. Right now. But if you look at the top, it says top secret. And they've also got some other it's an alphabet soup at the top. It's a complete alphabet soup. All of these things mean different. For example, NOFORN. That means no foreign national. So if you're for example a British intelligence official, you're not allowed to see this document. This is only for US intelligence. Actually, does it say Five Eyes somewhere? No, it doesn't. Yeah, FISA is for here the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, so that's a separate thing as well. So basically, a real alphabet soup, and it's boring and ugly, and this is how most government documents look. But the rest of it, I mean, wow, whoever made this was sitting there, you know, in Photoshop going, I'm a boss right now. But going back to the Al Jazeera thing, or actually we finished it. There's nothing left to talk about. But there's a video I found. This is from Judge Napolitano. Let's see what they had to say.
The hope in the release of these documents is that two things. One is that it would give an off-ramp, that people would say, well, look, clearly, I mean, you know, all our information is now in public domain. It's not possible to go ahead. Maybe we need to delay it and push it back and then eventually sort of fade out and let it sort of die its own death. But I think the other expectation in
die its own death. What an amazing phrase.
these documents was there is a lot of divisions in NATO, particularly the uniform branches of the military, not the bureaucrats and the people who sit on these committees in NATO's, but the uniforms in Germany and France and elsewhere have deep reservations about the merits of having an offensive. They don't think Ukraine is going to be able to launch it, doesn't have the manpower, doesn't have the resources, and if they do, it's going to be a disaster. And so I think they hope that by putting it out like this, it's going to be able to allow critics who have felt unable to say these things, controversial.
Right. So he makes a very important point, which is that, people have looked at these documents and said, well, Ukraine's air defenses are on the verge of collapse. Ukraine just cannot handle a spring offensive right now. They're just not in any shape. Again, first of all, you should take the losses into... Maybe let's get the issue with the losses straightened out so we know who's lost how many people and bombers and so on. But just going back to what he said, I really think, I mean, Christ, that's... You never know. You never know. This whole thing could be a psyop. It could maybe be what he suggested now, that they're intentionally releasing this to deter Ukraine from going through this spring offensive, or for critics of that spring offensive to permit them to be more vocal, whether it's outside or inside NATO. Who the hell knows, man? It's also interesting because, for example, the MOD, so that's the Pentagon over here in the UK, they said that you shouldn't... Here's the post on Twitter, right? Nowadays, the CIA even has a Twitter account. They say the widely reported leak of alleged classified U.S. information has demonstrated a serious level of inaccuracy. Readers should be cautious about taking at face value allegations that have the potential to spread disinformation. I mean, that's just as vague as it comes, right? But again, you have no clue what part of the leaks they mean. What is the British MOD saying here? Are they saying that the numbers regarding the KIA are inaccurate? Is it the number of British special forces? The fact that the Americans are spying on Zelensky? I mean, this could fucking mean anything. It's this typical spook bullshit. They speak in like 15 tongues at once, goddamn demons. No, but seriously, it's just so weird, this entire story. I personally think that number one, we know it's outdated because these things were appearing on Discord like a month ago. So even if they were actual last month, they don't matter anymore. They're real enough that Ukraine has come out and said, well, we've had to change our battle plans. Now, that could also be disinformation for the Russians, basically making the Russians think that they're going to act differently than what's in the documents. When you start going down this rabbit hole of war propaganda and spook shit, there's like 15 million levels of it. This person could be lying to trick that person who's lying to trick this person. You will go literally insane. you will go nuts. So let's leave it at that. I've given you all the information that we have, and we can all go insane on our own time and die our own death. As that guy said, what a phrase. Oh, Christ. All in all, if I had to rate this, you know, like being a journalist and all, this is the worst dump of classified documents I've ever seen. Completely disorganized. Nobody knows what's what. Just, you know, 0 out of 0. Okay. We've got two more people who've just signed up on Discord. Jesus Christ, they've infected me. On Patreon. So thank you very much to Adam. I appreciate it. And there's one more person actually whose name I can't see for some reason. We're trying to refresh here, but whoever you are, thank you so much for supporting the show. I'm very grateful. For those of you who don't know, if you would like to support my work on Patreon, you can give £1 a month, $2 a month. I don't care. Whatever currency. You better start donating in renminbi and rubles at this point, and Saudi Riyal. Bring me that multipolar world money. In any case, I'm going to play Crab Dance for Adam, and everybody who joins, I'm going to play them a crab dance. Did anyone join on YouTube? I should also be checking in there. So I'll tell you in a moment. Without further ado...
Clap for that, you stupid bastard. And Corn Pop was a bad dude. And he ran a bunch of bad boys.
Listen, fuckhead, you have fucking crossed the line. Claiming I'm the enemy. You got that, you goddamn son of a bitch?
I don't give a fuck what you think, bitch.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
Cut that bitch off.
Thank you for Iron Dome, which is a technical marvel.
والله انتوا كلاب بصراحة يعني. ماشي نشتغل عادي.
We lied, we cheated, we stole.
China.
And you ain't black.
There's always the macro, and then there's the micro.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
You talking to me?
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll have 2 number 9s. The number 9 lords.
we got him.
I told myself, I know it's not.
I've fallen, and I can't get up. Disgusting!
Why you texting? Why? You're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay. Okay.
Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. That never gets old, man. That never gets old. Today I decided to rock the Shami one, the Syrian one. You might be thinking that this looks like the Palestinian one. It does, but it's not the same. Those of you who know your stuff and who have keen those of you who are keen observers will notice the difference in patterns. So I decided to rock this one, right? Since we had so much good diplomacy today with Syria. By the way, I see on YouTube we got a couple of new members. One of them is called Hep, and the other one is called Duan Fogel. And then there's also there's a whole bunch of people who joined. I didn't even get a notification or anything, but now I can see it. So thank you very much. We got T Poker, we got Muhammad, we got Pixel, we got something. What is that? Tinoviel de Bois, James Starks, Bruce. Ewa, Joseph, Saku, thank everybody for joining as a YouTube member. It's the same thing as Patreon. It's basically a monthly donation, but you get free emojis. Man, I promised you guys we would work on those emojis and GIFs and stuff. We should probably do that now, like in a second. Fogel is saying nothing better than good diplomacy. You can't beat it. You can't beat it. One of you was saying that. Hold on, where was this thing with I think Lumfu said that Richie will be accepting donation in form of Discord Nitro boost. No, not just yet. Not just yet. And we got Miss Tree says Sun Tzu isn't our strong suit, evidently. Oh, but of course he is. Sun Tzu is for those of you who are not familiar, is a Chinese general. I think he lived in, what is this, like 5th century BC, and he wrote a very famous book. It's called The Art of War, and it's well, as the name implies, it's every tactician's Bible. But I don't think he anticipated Discord dumps of Pentagon documents when he wrote The Art of War. Okay, Lana is saying Richie, give us a Putin emoji, please, and Assange. Okay, first of all, you need to stop putting those two names in the same sentence, or you're gonna awake the Russiagators, the fucking zombie, like red eyes come on like Terminators, you know. And Ivanovich says, make ruble donation possible. You got a big fan base here. Yo, man, I would love nothing more. And I'm assuming you mean in Russia, right? I mean, that makes me very happy to hear, but you guys are under sanctions. So, you know, I don't know how we're going to get those rubles. Keep them aside in a piggy bank for me, you know, we'll get them someday. Not a cat says Sun Tzu anticipated everything. Shit. I guess you're right, man. I guess you're right. I didn't want to walk, I didn't want to step on Mr. Tzu. Lumfu wants a Maduro emoji. Okay, I have to oblige you. Give me a second, because you have to understand, I need to get a photo and chop it up and upload it. So actually, let me just make a list and do this afterwards so you don't have to watch me like staring at a screen for 5 hours. Hold on. Let me get a pen or something, man. Claudia, are you writing this down? Maduro emoji and Assange. What else were you guys saying? I'm trying to read in the comments. Miss K is saying, from Russia you could try donating with Bitcoin. I guess so. I have no clue how crypto works. Like, you guys have sent me stuff and it's just sitting there, and I mean, I have no clue what to do with it, man. This is where I reach my limit, you know? I can speak 4 goddamn languages and decode politics, but I'm done with, you can have at it. And thank you to everybody who's donating in crypto, but really, I cannot be bothered to figure out how to even sell that stuff. It's really, I don't have it in me, man. Maybe I'm getting old. Okay, give me a second. Claudio, you're writing all of this down, right? Also, Claudio is very kind. She updated the thermometer. Give me a second to pull this up. Just a moment. So, by the way, we got thank you to Ala DX for the message. So they're saying that the situation in Bahrain is basically, it's gone from bad to worse, and that if I would like to communicate with Bahraini activists in order to obtain the bigger picture from them, I'll send you the information via email, private message. Yes, please. Yes, please. خليني اكتب الايميل بالchat بس ثانية. Okay, hold on, let me tag them just so they see that. I don't have an Arabic keyboard here, so I can't type back in Arabic, but hold on. When I tag you, if I'm trying to tag one of you guys in the chat, it doesn't actually tag you. It shows it to me before I send it. like it's gonna do that, but then I don't know if anything actually happens. Looks like it doesn't. Okay, great. I'm glad you got it. شكرا كثير. And Claudia's telling me that she's gonna make them good, the emojis. Yes, I know you will. Don't start teasing them right now. Don't start teasing them. All right, hold on. Let me put up the I don't even know what to call this. I call it a thermometer, but it's an obscenity of Biden sniffing it. I mean, ew. Ew. Give me a second here. Where did we put it, Claudia? There it is. Claudia was kind enough to suffer through this and you know, so to update the number of patrons that we have. So thank you to all 688 of you. And remember, we have new ones now on YouTube. So I don't know if we should be counting them, but you know, they're growing. Hep also just joined. Thank you, Hep. Thank you very much. So yeah, this is pretty good, man. Let me see if we got anybody else. We have no, it's the same right now. It's the same on Patreon. But anyway, you know, whether you are donating rubles in some, you know, or crypto coin or whatever it is, you know, I'm grateful to you guys, and even just posting the videos is a form of support for the channel. So thank you very much. And you know, share these with your, well, I don't know, man. Some people like posting about politics. Others don't. Do you? But you know, the thing is, you know, with the Israelis, it's a funny situation right now. I don't know what's going to happen if they keep, you know, provoking the resistance and going into the Al-Aqsa Mosque and beating up everybody. I mean, I would think twice if I were them before I do that, because when you see Syria and Gaza and South Lebanon and all of them acting at once, this is a game changer. This is a big game changer, and it's so interesting because the whole landscape of the Middle East is transforming right now in every way, militarily, diplomatically. The whole thing is changing, and you could say the same on the international stage. And that's what I've been telling you for the last, you know, since the Ukraine war started, that the Ukraine war has triggered an acceleration, you know, as we move into a multipolar world. Everything is on, you know, turbo mode. Who the hell would have thought that Iran and Saudi Arabia are going to get together and make peace, and China is going to be the one in the middle, you know, and emerge as the true peacemaker. Who the hell could have guessed that? And then as a result, Syria is going to make peace with Saudi Arabia, and then Saudi Arabia with Yemen, and then the whole resistance is going to hit Israel after, you know, in response to what Israel is doing in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Man. Really, it's like somebody pressed the reset button. and everything has been thrown into a washing machine, and it's being, you know, it's going round and round and round and round. The chips haven't fallen yet, man, but you know, things certainly seem to be going in a more productive direction, shall we say. And when I say productive, I mean, you know, in terms of deterrence and diplomacy and seeing you know, people bury the hatchet and cut their losses and just, you know, move forward. This is good for everyone. And you know, it's difficult. I was joking earlier that how awkward it must be for the Saudis to you know, make peace with a government or governments plural, that they've been trying to overthrow. But it's actually harder for Syria and Yemen because Syria and Yemen were actually destroyed. Saudi Arabia is untouched. Nothing happened in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is fine, right? They didn't. They didn't really experience or take any losses. Yes, some punches, but nothing you could compare to Syria and Saudi Arabia, Syria and Yemen. But either way, bury the hatchet. Good, and let's move forward because, having all these Arab countries, it's a few of them, at war with each other, whether it's through proxy groups or not, is not good, and it makes the situation easier for the Western occupier or the Zionist occupier. Don't make their work easier for them. Don't make their presence easier, or give them a break in any way. Saudi Arabia a few decades ago, I'm sure you all remember there was an oil crash in the beginning of the 70s, right? There was a stock market crash, and why did all this happen? You had people, who just couldn't get gas in the U.S. There was a massive shortage. Why did this happen? Why was there an oil crash? Because the Saudis actually had a spine back then. They put their foot down. Not so much since, yeah. But now things are changing. That's good. Let's see where they go. Claudia, could you I'm getting some ideas for emojis. Claudia said that she knows where to add them. She just found it in the studio. Good. Okay. She's gonna go wild with them. We need to restrain Claudia and limit her computer time, or she'll go nuts. There'll be a million emojis. No, but this is great. I'm glad you found it. Okay. Just a second, guys. Let me type something out. Just a moment. Guys, again, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so glad that we got to do this segment, and it's nice for a change to do it with some good news. I'm gonna show you that picture again. Okay, I didn't mean this one, but this one is also epic. We should print it out, put in the background. No, but I actually meant the one here with the Syrian foreign minister landing in Saudi Arabia. Come on, man. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Isn't it nice? Isn't it nice to have diplomacy for a change? Some good things happening. It's really good. Okay. Anyway, I'm laughing again because of these horrendous documents. God, and it's funny because you would see all these articles about them, but nobody would actually link to them because, having to struggle through this grainy crap. No, thank you. Really, and then all for that, just for them to tell you, well, maybe they're true. Which one is it? Guys, thank you for tuning in, and thank you to everyone who's supporting the show. Again, if you'd like to leave a donation or something, you can do that on PayPal. Give me a second. There's a screen here that has everything. I actually don't know where it is anymore. But Claudia's putting the links, which is all you need, to PayPal, Cash App, Patreon, whatever it is. And again, if you're just commenting or liking the video, I'm already happy, and that's a form of support for the show. So thank you guys very much. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you guys in a couple of days. We'll do another stream, okay? So make sure that you have the bell thing turned on, you have notifications turned on, and of course, on Substack, I basically use it to notify you via email when I go live. So if you prefer to get an email instead of, you know, an app or push app notification, then you can just put your email in on the Substack. It's richardmedhurst.substack.com. This is what it looks like. You literally just type in your email and hit subscribe. It couldn't be easier. So that's richardmedhurst.substack.com. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Take care, ma salame, and bye-bye.
I am once again asking for your financial support.
A is for
All men and women created by you know the thing.
B is for
I'm beginning to see why your wife left you.
C is for
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys.
D is for
Don't worry, I'm so serious. Children, I love to hear them.
E is for
Excuse to walk by the dealer and say, no, I'm not going to be a mule. I got something to do. I got to go do boom, boom, boom.
F is for
Friend, and she's a friend. She's been my friend in and out of public life.
G is for
Go to Joe 30330.
H is for
Hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down.
I is for
I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate.
J is for
Just look at the record.
I have President Biden, Vice President Biden.
Well, I tell you what, if you look at my record and you still doubt about my commitment, then you should vote for somebody else.
K is for
Kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
L is for
The lion, dog, face, pony soldier.
M is for
Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night. The phone, make sure the kids hear words.
N is for
NATO.
O is for
The only African American woman that ever been elected to the United States Senate.
P is for
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
R is for
Rest her soul, and although she's your mom's still alive.
S is for
Send a text to the word united.
T is for
Truth over facts.
U is for
Union workers, the UAW took incredible cuts in their future.
V is for
Don't vote for somebody else.
All right, thanks so much.
W is for
Wait, you're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay.
X is for
Xi Jinping.
Y is for
And you ain't black.